Ladies and gentlemen, you see, there is no action that goes unseen, no motive that goes unchecked, and no heart that isn't fully known. When we live in a world where deception often lurks in the shadows and dishonesty is dressed in plain clothes, it can be easy to lose sight of what's true. But I tell you this, God sees it all, and in His perfect time, He will expose everything. Sometimes we wonder why it feels as though evil prospers and the righteous are cast aside. We question why the schemes of some seem to flourish while the efforts of others are met with opposition. But remember, God has His timing. He is not slow, He is precise. And when He reveals, it's undeniable and unmistakable. Understand that exposure is not a matter of chance or coincidence, it's part of a divine plan. God's hand is always at work, aligning moments, orchestrating revelations, and exposing what needs to be seen for His truth to shine. God's exposure brings justice. It's not done in spite or revenge, but as a divine act of setting things right. Exposure leads to purification and realignment, and God is committed to truth and holiness. In the fullness of time, God will shine light into dark places, revealing not only the actions, but also the heart behind them. We must trust in God's timing and resist the urge to rush His work. He knows all, He sees all, and when He moves, it will be clear. No facade can withstand His truth. God will expose, and when He does, it will be for the good of all, leading to restoration, redemption, and renewal. God's omniscience is profound, it's beyond our comprehension. Imagine a God who doesn't just see what we do or hear what we say, but who understands the depths of our souls, who perceives every thought, every motive, every hidden intention. This is not just knowledge, it's divine insight, and it's complete. Our God doesn't see partially, He doesn't know in fragments. He sees everything fully, past, present, and future in one eternal, complete vision. Every detail of creation lies before Him like an open book, from the intricacies of a flower's design to the expanse of galaxies. And if He knows the stars by name, how much more does He know the workings of the human heart? You see, He understands not only what we are, but why we are, not just what we've done, but why we've done it. There is no hiding, no concealing, no corner of existence that's beyond His reach. But God's knowledge is not like ours. It doesn't ebb and flow. It doesn't need to be pieced together over time. God's knowledge is whole and immediate, stretching far beyond time and space. For He is the one who created time itself. He knows the end from the beginning, and He holds the middle in His hands. God knew us before we knew ourselves. He saw us before we were formed in the womb, and He knows us better than we will ever know ourselves. This understanding of God's omniscience brings with it a comforting accountability. We may be able to hide parts of ourselves from others. We may be able to keep secrets, but nothing is hidden from God. And yet with this perfect knowledge, He loves us. He sees every fault, every mistake, every failure, and still He draws us closer. His omniscience is not a reason to fear, but a reason to trust. He knows the way forward even when we're lost. He knows the strength within us even when we feel weak. And He knows the path of our lives, not just as a distant observer, but as a guiding hand, gently leading us to a destiny He's seen from the beginning of time. So when we feel misunderstood, when we feel unseen, remember that God knows us. And His knowledge is not just awareness, it is the knowing of a Father who understands, who cares, and who holds every part of our lives with perfect wisdom. God's omniscience means that we are fully known, fully understood, and fully loved by the one who sees all things. And in His perfect knowledge, we can rest assured, for He holds our lives and our future firmly in His hands. Divine timing is a mystery that we often grapple with because it does not conform to our human schedules, expectations, or desires. We live in a world that moves fast, where we want results, change, and answers on demand. But God's timing is different. It operates outside of our sense of urgency and our need for control. In His wisdom, God knows precisely when to act, when to reveal, and when to bring everything into the light. His timing is never off by a second. It is always right on target. Now, if you think about it, delay can feel painful and waiting can be uncomfortable, but it's in that very waiting that God is at work. God doesn't delay to test our patience or to hold us back. He does it to prepare us. He waits so that we may develop a strength we didn't know we had, or so that others involved may come to the fullness of their role in the plan he is unfolding. Every moment that feels delayed is actually a moment that God is using to orchestrate something beyond our understanding. In his timing, he aligns events, opens doors, and yes, even closes doors, so that when the exposure comes, it is not just timely, it is transformative. Think of the growth of a seed beneath the soil. To us, it looks as though nothing is happening, but beneath the surface, that seed is breaking, transforming, reaching, preparing. God's timing is like this. Just because we don't see immediate evidence doesn't mean he isn't at work. And when the time is right, that seed breaks through the soil, revealing the fruit that had been developing in silence. That's how God's timing works. He is bringing everything together behind the scenes, working through the complexities of our lives to bring about a revelation that is neither too soon nor too late. You see, if exposure comes too early, it may harm rather than help, revealing things in a way that disrupts rather than builds. If it comes too late, then growth and purpose may be stifled. But God, in his perfect wisdom, knows exactly when to act. His timing is meant to uplift, to redeem, and to restore. His timing always has purpose. It's purposeful delay, intentional patience, precise preparation. When we find ourselves questioning, wondering why God hasn't exposed or revealed something yet, remember that he is working within his divine calendar, not ours. It is not inaction, it is a preparation for the right moment, the exact moment when all things will align and reveal the truth. And when that exposure comes, it will not only bring light, but also wisdom, understanding, and healing. So trust in his timing. Know that God is neither delayed nor hurried, for he knows the exact time that will lead to the greatest blessing, the greatest impact, and the greatest transformation. Waiting on God's timing isn't about standing still, it's about preparing, trusting, and resting in the assurance that when God moves, he moves at the perfect moment. God's purpose in exposure is never to shame, destroy, or bring ruin. When he exposes, it is not to condemn, but to correct, to realign, to set things back on a path of righteousness and justice. We must understand that God's heart is for restoration. His exposure is the work of a just judge and a compassionate father who seeks to bring us closer to truth and not to cast us away. Exposure is part of God's process of bringing light into dark places. Darkness is where confusion reigns, where lies can take root, and where deception can flourish. But when God shines his light, it clears away the falsehood, revealing what has been hidden. This isn't done to harm, but to heal. It's not to ruin, but to rebuild. In his love, God cannot allow lies and deceit to exist unchecked because they bring disorder, pain, and distance from him. He exposes to uproot what's wrong, making room for what's right. Think of it this way: when a doctor discovers an illness, their goal is not to leave it hidden in the body, but to bring it to light. The doctor's revelation of the illness is an act of mercy, not condemnation. They reveal what is wrong so that healing can begin. In the same way, when God exposes, he is acting as the healer of our lives and our hearts. He uncovers what may be causing harm to the soul, to the spirit, to relationships, so that it can be dealt with and that true restoration can take place. And God's justice is never random, it's always fair, always balanced with mercy. Exposure is his way of realigning things with truth. When God shines a light on what has been hidden, it's because he desires to bring order and justice back into places of disorder. He wants his people to walk in truth and wholeness in alignment with him. He wants communities, families, and individuals to live without the burden of hidden sin or secret shame. That's why his exposure always aligns with his justice. He reveals to reestablish, to restore righteousness so that his peace and order can flow where there was once chaos. And for those who are affected by exposure, God's purpose is to restore, not to ruin. He is not a God of condemnation. He is a God of conviction that leads to change, that brings growth and realignment. Exposure, when it comes from God, is redemptive, opening doors for confession, forgiveness, and new beginnings. God exposes so that we might come to see ourselves more clearly, to turn toward him, and to embrace a life that is free from deception and filled with his truth. When God exposes, he does so as the wise judge who knows the depths of every heart, who sees what is hidden, and who loves enough to bring those things to light. He exposes not to point fingers, but to point the way toward freedom and fullness in him. Exposure is an invitation to embrace truth, to align with justice, and to walk in the light of his love. The unmasking of deception is a divine act that God orchestrates, often in ways we least expect. Deception can be like a carefully woven web, subtle and skillfully crafted, designed to ensnare and mislead. It can infiltrate our relationships, our work, even our inner lives, operating under the guise of truth. But here's the reality: no deception can stand in the presence of God's truth. God is a God of clarity, of transparency, and of authenticity, and where he dwells, deception cannot remain hidden for long. Now understand this: deception thrives in darkness. It depends on secrets, on hidden motives, and on twisted intentions. It cloaks itself in shadows, often presenting itself as something good, something innocent, or even something righteous. It may look like trustworthiness on the surface, but underneath it's a lie. But God's light penetrates that darkness. When God decides to unmask deception, he does so with precision, cutting through the pretense and the disguises. He sees beyond the facades that people put up, straight into the heart where intentions lie. And in his timing, he will pull back the veil, exposing things as they truly are. When God unmasks deception, it can be startling because it forces us to confront what we may have ignored, tolerated, or even believed. God's revelation is like a light switch that flicks on in a dark room, revealing the reality we didn't want to see. It's a moment that can feel unsettling, even painful, but it's also liberating. God unmasks this deception so we can walk in truth, so we can be freed from the power of lies that hold us captive. He unmasks to release us from chains we might not even realize are binding us, freeing us to live in alignment with his truth. And there is a reason God unmasks deception rather than allowing it to continue unchecked. Deception corrupts the heart and clouds judgment. It skews perception and brings confusion. Deception creates disorder, and God is a God of order. He cannot allow lies to prevail because they disrupt his purpose and his peace. When God's truth enters, it brings clarity, it brings alignment, and it brings justice. God unmasks deception to realign us with his ways, to restore integrity, and to dismantle every lie that would pull us away from his truth. Now, the process of unmasking isn't always comfortable. It can bring to light things we would rather avoid, or confront truths we would rather not face. But know this: when God reveals, it is for our good. He does not unmask to humiliate, he unmasks to heal. Every exposure of deception is an opportunity for transformation, for the renewal of our minds and our hearts. It's a chance to realign with God's truth and to walk in the light. We can rest assured that God's unmasking of deception is always done in love. He is not out to destroy, he is out to restore. When he shines a light on what's hidden, it's because he is calling us to a higher standard, to a life that is genuine and free. Deception may try to hide, but it cannot escape the gaze of the Almighty. And in his time, he will reveal what needs to be revealed, bringing us closer to him, to his truth, and to his purpose. So let us welcome God's light and allow him to reveal any deception in our lives. Let us be people who seek truth, who live honestly, and who trust in the one who knows all and sees all. God's unmasking is not to break us, but to set us free, to clear the way for his truth, and to bring us into the fullness of life he intends. Exposure in the divine sense is an act of purification, a way in which God brings forth the truth to cleanse, refine, and realign. When God exposes, he is not merely revealing, he is purifying. He is acting as a refiner, removing impurities from situations, people, and even hidden intentions. Just as fire purifies precious metals, God's exposure burns away the dross, stripping away anything that hinders purity and integrity. His exposure serves as a pathway to holiness, to authenticity, and to a renewed alignment with his will. When God decides to reveal something, he does so with purpose. This is not arbitrary or hasty. It is a careful, intentional process where everything that does not serve his truth is brought into the light. Imagine a sculptor chiseling away at a stone, removing pieces that obstruct the beauty within. In the same way, God's revelation is a way of removing anything false, deceitful, or harmful from our lives and the situations we're in. It's an act of love that seeks to bring forth the best in us unhindered by hidden motives, false fronts, or tangled lies. God's purification through exposure reaches deep, touching the very core of people's hearts and intentions. There are times when we ourselves may be unaware of hidden motives, the small, subtle ways in which our actions don't align with our words or intentions. But God sees these things. He knows where our intentions have become clouded, where situations have grown distorted, and where people have allowed dishonesty to creep in. By exposing these things, God gives us a chance to become aware, to address what needs correction, and to move forward with clarity and integrity. And this purification doesn't just cleanse individuals, it transforms environments. When God exposes, He is purifying atmospheres, workplaces, relationships, and communities. He's removing the darkness that can distort our interactions, our decisions, and our growth. In a workplace, for instance, God's exposure might reveal a spirit of competition or deceit that has affected everyone. In a family, it might uncover resentment or unspoken hurt. Exposure allows these things to be addressed, confessed, and ultimately healed, restoring the purity and peace that God intends for these spaces. This purification through exposure aligns us closer to God's justice. Deception, unaddressed wrongdoing, and hidden sin create imbalance, disrupting God's design for justice. When God reveals the truth, it's a call back to righteousness, to fairness, and to wholeness. God's exposure of hidden things is a means of setting things right, of aligning with His justice, and of restoring the rightful order in our lives and the world around us. And while exposure may feel challenging, even painful, it is ultimately a gift. Purification requires surrender, a willingness to let go of what is unclean, to let go of pride, and to release any attachment to falsehood. God's exposure calls us to this surrender, urging us to let Him cleanse what is not of Him. We come out of this purification process refined, strengthened, and ready to step into a life that is honest and aligned with His purpose. In God's hands, exposure is a tool for restoration. It is a pathway to healing, to deeper integrity, and to spiritual growth. By allowing God to purify us through exposure, we open ourselves up to His transformative power, becoming vessels that can carry His light more fully, unhindered by any darkness. In this, we draw closer to His holiness, to His righteousness, and to the truth that He calls us to embody. Justice over revenge is a profound principle that lies at the very heart of God's character. When God exposes situations, people, or intentions, it is essential to understand that this act is not fueled by a desire for vengeance, but rather by a commitment to divine justice. God is not a capricious deity seeking retribution. He is a loving and righteous judge who longs for truth, restoration, and the establishment of order in a chaotic world. To grasp this truth, we must first recognize that revenge is inherently human, a response rooted in emotion, pain, and the desire to right a perceived wrong through personal means. Revenge seeks satisfaction for grievances and is often driven by anger or hurt. It is reactionary and lacks the foresight to consider the broader implications of its actions. In contrast, God's exposure is never reactionary. It is deliberate and intentional, aimed at bringing about a greater good, a higher order of righteousness that transcends our human understanding. When God exposes the hidden things in our lives or in the world around us, He does so as an act of justice. His purpose is to correct, to realign, and to bring healing rather than to inflict harm. God's justice is restorative. It seeks to mend brokenness, heal wounds, and bring people back into alignment with His will. He understands that unaddressed wrongdoing creates a ripple effect, causing harm not just to individuals but to entire communities. His exposure serves as a means to stop the cycle of hurt and to initiate a process of healing. This divine justice is rooted in love. God loves His creation deeply, and when injustice prevails, it grieves His heart. He desires for every person to experience the fullness of life that comes from living in truth and righteousness. Therefore, His exposure of deception, wrongdoing, or hidden motives is not an act of cruelty. It is an invitation to reconciliation. It offers a pathway to restoration, a chance to turn back from the errors of the past and to embrace a future grounded in truth and justice. Moreover, when we consider the concept of justice over revenge, we are reminded of the importance of forgiveness. In God's eyes, holding on to bitterness or seeking personal vengeance only perpetuates the cycle of sin and hurt. God calls us to a higher standard, one that prioritizes reconciliation over retribution. His exposure encourages us to let go of the desire for revenge, to release our grievances into His capable hands, and to trust that He will bring about true justice in His way and timing. God's exposure also highlights the distinction between judgment and condemnation. While judgment seeks to discern right from wrong, condemnation seeks to punish and shame. God's exposure acts as a mirror, reflecting the truth so that we can recognize our need for His grace and mercy. This is not a harsh judgment meant to belittle us, but rather a loving correction aimed at leading us back to righteousness. In the grand narrative of God's plan, justice over revenge also serves as a reminder that ultimate accountability rests with Him. We do not need to take matters into our own hands, for God is the ultimate judge who sees all and knows all. He understands the depths of human hearts and the complexities of every situation. Trusting in His justice means surrendering our need for revenge and allowing Him to handle the intricacies of each circumstance. Therefore, as we navigate the challenges of life, let us remember that God's exposure is an act of divine justice. It is a sacred process meant to restore balance, promote healing, and align us with His will. In every act of exposure, God invites us to step away from the desire for revenge and to embrace His heart of justice, a heart that longs for truth, restoration, and reconciliation. In doing so, we align ourselves with His purposes and become agents of His love and justice in a world desperately in need of healing. Faith plays a transformative role in our lives, acting as a bridge between our present circumstances and the divine possibilities that lie ahead. It is a powerful force that moves us beyond what we see, grounding us in a trust that transcends our immediate understanding. When we engage with the concept of faith, we recognize that it is not merely a passive state of belief. It is an active and dynamic force that shapes our reality, influences our decisions, and molds our character. To understand the role of faith, we must first acknowledge that faith is fundamentally about trust in God's character, His promises, and His plans for our lives. This trust is not based on what we can see or understand. Rather, it is anchored in the belief that God is sovereign, wise, and ultimately good. It invites us to step into the unknown, to embrace uncertainty, and to rely on a power that is greater than ourselves. This act of surrender is the essence of faith, allowing us to release our grip on control and open ourselves to divine guidance. Faith serves as a compass in the midst of life's challenges. When trials and tribulations arise, it is faith that enables us to stand firm. It gives us the strength to persevere when circumstances seem insurmountable and when the path forward appears obscure. With faith, we can view obstacles not as barriers, but as opportunities for growth and transformation. It empowers us to look beyond the immediate difficulties and to trust that God is at work orchestrating events for our ultimate good. Moreover, faith is a source of hope. In a world often marked by despair and uncertainty, faith provides a steadfast assurance that there is a future filled with promise. It allows us to envision what is not yet realized and to believe in the possibilities that lie ahead. This hope is not based on wishful thinking. It is grounded in the certainty that God is faithful to His word and that He will fulfill His promises in His perfect timing. It encourages us to dream bigger, to aspire to greater heights, and to pursue the destiny that God has ordained for us. Faith also plays a crucial role in our relationships with God, with ourselves, and with others. It fosters intimacy with the Creator, inviting us into a deeper communion with Him. Through faith, we learn to approach God with confidence, knowing that He hears our prayers, understands our struggles, and delights in our trust. This relational aspect of faith nurtures a vibrant spiritual life characterized by dialogue, worship, and the experience of His presence. In our relationship with ourselves, faith encourages us to see ourselves through the lens of God's love and purpose. It affirms our identity as beloved children of God, instilling in us a sense of worth and belonging. This faith-filled perspective shapes our self-image, allowing us to rise above feelings of inadequacy, fear, or doubt. It propels us toward our God-given potential, empowering us to pursue our dreams and to fulfill the unique calling placed upon our lives. Faith also extends into our interactions with others. It enables us to extend grace, to forgive, and to cultivate understanding in our relationships. When we approach others with a heart filled with faith, we see them not merely through the lens of their flaws, but through the potential that God sees in them. This perspective fosters compassion, kindness, and a spirit of unity, reflecting the love of Christ to those around us. Furthermore, the role of faith in our lives cannot be understated when it comes to the challenges of the world. In times of uncertainty, fear, or societal upheaval, faith stands as a bulwark against the tides of negativity and doubt. It calls us to be agents of change, to act with courage, and to stand firm in our convictions. It empowers us to engage with the world around us, to advocate for justice, and to be a voice of hope in a world longing for light. Faith also positions us to receive God's blessings. As we trust in Him and step out in obedience, we align ourselves with His divine purposes. This alignment opens the door for God to work in and through us in extraordinary ways. Faith allows us to receive the gifts of the Spirit, to experience divine favor, and to walk in the abundance that comes from living in accordance with God's will. In essence, the role of faith is multifaceted, encompassing trust, hope, relationship, and transformation. It is a living force that propels us forward, inviting us to embrace God's promises and to walk confidently in the path He has laid out for us. As we cultivate our faith, we discover that it is not merely about believing in the unseen, but about engaging with the very essence of God's character, His love, His faithfulness, and His unwavering commitment to His creation. In this journey of faith, we find strength, hope, and the assurance that with God, all things are possible. Heart matters profoundly shape the essence of our lives. When God engages in the act of revelation, He does not simply unveil actions or behaviors. He delves deeper, illuminating the very heart behind those actions. This divine scrutiny is a reflection of God's justice, making His judgment not only fair but profoundly compassionate. It reveals that God's assessment transcends mere outward appearances and behaviors, probing into the motivations, intentions, and conditions of our hearts. Understanding that God is concerned with the heart changes the way we view ourselves and others. In our human interactions, we often focus on what is visible, the actions, the words spoken, the choices made. However, God invites us to see beyond the surface. He calls us to examine the heart's posture, the intentions behind our actions, and the motivations that drive us. This deeper understanding is vital for spiritual growth and transformation, for it allows us to engage authentically with ourselves and with God. The heart, in biblical terms, encompasses our thoughts, emotions, desires, and will. It is the seat of our identity and the source of our actions. When God looks upon the heart, He sees not only what we do, but also why we do it. This profound perspective challenges us to confront our inner lives and encourages us to seek authenticity in our relationship with God. It compels us to ask ourselves difficult questions. Are our actions aligned with a genuine desire to honor God? Are we motivated by love, compassion, and integrity? Or do we sometimes act out of fear, selfishness, or a desire for approval? God's emphasis on the heart also serves as a reminder of His grace and mercy. Human judgment tends to be quick and often shallow, focusing on external behaviors without consideration of the internal struggles that may lie beneath. But God, in His infinite wisdom and love, understands our frailties and complexities. He knows the battles we face and the wounds that shape our actions. This knowledge allows Him to offer grace that goes beyond mere forgiveness. It encompasses healing and restoration. When God exposes the heart, it is not to condemn, but to free us from the burdens we carry, offering us a path toward true wholeness. This divine revelation also promotes accountability. Understanding that God sees the heart encourages us to take responsibility for our intentions. It reminds us that our actions are not merely transactional, but relational. Every choice we make has implications, not just for ourselves, but for those around us. When we realize that our motivations matter, we become more mindful of how we treat others, more thoughtful about the impact of our words, and more deliberate in our actions. This accountability fosters a culture of integrity, humility, and compassion. In moments of exposure, when God reveals the condition of our hearts, it may feel uncomfortable. Yet this discomfort is often a catalyst for growth. God's revelation is an invitation to repentance, a turning away from anything that does not align with His will. It allows us to confront our shortcomings and to embrace the transformative power of His love. In this process, we learn that true change begins within. As our hearts are transformed, our actions naturally reflect this inner change, creating a harmony between who we are and what we do. Moreover, God's focus on the heart influences how we interact with others. When we understand that God reveals the heart behind actions, we can extend grace and understanding to those around us. Instead of being quick to judge, we can approach others with compassion, recognizing that they too are on a journey of transformation. This perspective encourages us to foster a spirit of empathy, to seek to understand the struggles and motivations of others, and to respond with love rather than criticism. In our pursuit of righteousness, we must remember that God is not merely interested in compliance with rules. He desires a relationship rooted in love and authenticity. He longs for us to cultivate hearts that seek Him above all else, hearts that are willing to be molded and shaped by His Spirit. When our hearts are aligned with God's purposes, our actions will flow naturally from that alignment, reflecting His love, justice, and grace in the world. Ultimately, heart matters remind us that God's judgment is not a mere examination of what we do, but a profound understanding of who we are. It invites us into a deeper relationship with Him, urging us to pursue authenticity and integrity in all aspects of our lives. In embracing this truth, we discover that the journey of faith is not just about behavior modification, but about heart transformation, a journey that leads us to a more profound understanding of God's love, mercy, and justice. As we allow God to reveal our hearts, we step into a fuller expression of our identity as His beloved children, empowered to reflect His character in a world in need of hope and healing. In a world often overshadowed by confusion, despair, and darkness, the illuminating power of God's truth stands as a beacon of hope. This divine light penetrates the deepest shadows of our lives, transforming chaos into clarity and uncertainty into peace. When we speak of light and darkness, we are referring to the profound ability of God's truth to reveal, restore, and renew our understanding of reality, bringing forth a sense of direction and purpose. Darkness in many ways symbolizes the struggles, fears, and doubts that pervade our human experience. It can manifest as confusion, anxiety, or despair, leading us to question our path and our purpose. In these moments of uncertainty, it is easy to feel lost, overwhelmed, and alone. Yet it is precisely in these times that the truth of God shines most brilliantly, offering guidance and illumination. His truth is not a mere set of doctrines or principles. It is the very essence of His nature, an embodiment of love, wisdom, and righteousness that brings light into our darkest experiences. When God's truth enters a situation, it dispels the fog of confusion. Think of a room shrouded in darkness. The moment light is introduced, shadows flee and the environment transforms. Similarly, when we invite God's truth into our lives, it illuminates our understanding, enabling us to see circumstances from His perspective. This divine illumination enables us to discern what is genuine from what is misleading, empowering us to make decisions rooted in wisdom rather than fear. This light also reveals the nature of our circumstances and ourselves. It encourages self-examination and honesty, inviting us to confront the realities we may wish to ignore. In the light of truth, we can recognize the areas in our lives that need healing, growth, or change. This revelation is not meant to bring shame or condemnation. Rather, it is a gift from God, a chance to align our lives with His will and purpose. When we see ourselves and our circumstances through the lens of truth, we are equipped to take actionable steps toward transformation and renewal. Moreover, God's truth provides a framework for understanding the world around us. In a society bombarded with conflicting messages and ideologies, it can be easy to feel disoriented. However, the light of God's truth serves as a steadfast compass, guiding us through the murky waters of life. It helps us to differentiate between what is fleeting and what is eternal, encouraging us to anchor our hopes in the promises of God rather than the shifting sands of human opinion. This anchoring is vital in establishing a sense of stability and assurance in our lives, allowing us to navigate challenges with confidence. Additionally, God's truth empowers us to shine our light into the lives of others. When we experience the transformative power of His truth, it compels us to share that light with those around us. Our lives become testimonies of hope and redemption, encouraging others to seek the same illumination in their own darkness. This ripple effect of light fosters a community built on understanding, compassion, and support. As we illuminate the paths of others, we contribute to a collective journey toward healing and restoration. In moments of despair, when hope seems elusive, God's truth acts as a lifeline. It reassures us of His presence, promises, and plans for our lives. The light of His truth reminds us that we are not defined by our struggles or failures, but by this profound understanding grants us the courage to face our challenges head on, knowing that we are equipped with the light of His truth. Furthermore, the light of God's truth brings comfort and peace in times of turmoil. It serves as a reminder that even in our darkest moments, we are never alone. God walks with us, guiding us through the shadows and illuminating our path with His unwavering love. This assurance fosters a deep sense of peace that transcends circumstances, allowing us to rest in the knowledge that God is in control. As we embrace the light of God's truth, we are also called to be bearers of that light in the world. We are challenged to reflect His character and His love, becoming agents of change in a world that desperately needs hope. This call to action is both a privilege and a responsibility, urging us to engage with our communities, to speak truth into situations of injustice, and to offer support to those in need. In this way, the light we receive from God is not meant to be hoarded, but shared freely, bringing illumination and hope to those who are still searching for answers. In conclusion, God's truth is a powerful force that brings light into the darkest places of our lives. It dispels confusion, reveals our true selves, and provides clarity in a world filled with chaos. As we embrace and walk in this truth, we are transformed and empowered to shine that light into the lives of others. In doing so, we participate in a divine mission to spread hope, healing, and understanding in a world longing for illumination. When we allow God's truth to guide us, we can navigate life with confidence, knowing that we are equipped with the light that dispels darkness, bringing forth a new dawn of possibility and purpose. Ultimate restoration is a profound concept that speaks to the heart of God's plan for humanity. It signifies not just a return to a previous state, but a transformative process that brings about renewal, redemption, and healing. This divine restoration is rooted in the belief that regardless of our past or the circumstances we find ourselves in, God has the power to renew us completely. It is a journey of healing that unfolds through exposure, a process by which hidden truths come to light, allowing for true transformation. Exposure is often perceived as a negative experience, an unveiling of flaws, mistakes, or failures. However, in the hands of a loving and merciful God, exposure serves a higher purpose. It acts as a catalyst for restoration, illuminating the areas of our lives that require healing and attention. When we confront the truth about ourselves, we are given the opportunity to acknowledge our struggles and shortcomings. This acknowledgement is the first step toward renewal. It requires courage to face what has been hidden or suppressed, yet it is essential for moving forward on the path of transformation. In the process of exposure, God does not seek to condemn us, but to liberate us. His intention is to bring healing to our wounded hearts, to restore our brokenness, and to create a foundation for redemption. When we are exposed to God's truth, we gain clarity about our identity, purpose, and the areas of our lives that need healing. This divine revelation serves as an invitation to shed the weight of guilt and shame which often bind us, preventing us from experiencing the fullness of life God desires for us. Renewal, therefore, is not simply about changing behaviors. It is about a deep transformation of the heart and mind. It is a process that aligns us with God's will and purpose for our lives. When we embrace exposure and allow it to lead us to renewal, we open ourselves to God's transformative power. We become vessels through which His grace and love can flow, impacting not only our lives, but also the lives of those around us. This renewal is holistic. It encompasses our emotional, spiritual, and relational well-being, leading to a comprehensive restoration of our being. Redemption is the next step in this journey of ultimate restoration. It signifies that no matter how far we may have strayed or how deep our wounds may be, God's love has the power to redeem us. In the process of exposure and renewal, we recognize that our past does not define us. Instead, we find our identity in Christ, who offers forgiveness and a fresh start. This redemption is an essential aspect of restoration. It transforms our narrative from one of defeat to one of victory, emphasizing that through Christ, we can overcome any obstacle. Healing, therefore, is the culmination of this transformative journey. It is not merely the absence of pain or struggle, but the presence of wholeness and peace. As we experience exposure, renewal, and redemption, we are led to a place of healing where our wounds are mended, our hearts are made whole, and our spirits are rejuvenated. This healing allows us to embrace our true selves, free from the chains of guilt, shame, and regret. We become living testimonies of God's faithfulness and grace, capable of reflecting His light into the world. Moreover, ultimate restoration is not a solitary experience. It is often intertwined with community. God uses relationships to facilitate healing and restoration in our lives. When we share our struggles and allow ourselves to be vulnerable with others, we create an environment where collective healing can take place. This community aspect of restoration emphasizes the importance of support, accountability, and encouragement. As we navigate the journey together, we build each other up, providing the love and understanding needed to experience true renewal. The journey of ultimate restoration culminates in a new foundation, one built on God's love, grace, and truth. This foundation empowers us to step boldly into our future, knowing that we are redeemed, renewed, and healed. It equips us to face challenges with resilience and to pursue our purpose with passion. We emerge from the process of exposure transformed, ready to fulfill the unique calling that God has placed on our lives. In conclusion, ultimate restoration is a divine process that unfolds through exposure, leading to renewal, redemption, and healing. It invites us to confront our truth and embrace the transformative power of God's love. As we navigate this journey, we experience a profound change that impacts not only our lives, but also the lives of those around us. Through exposure, we find the courage to acknowledge our struggles. Through renewal, we align ourselves with God's purpose. Through redemption, we discover our true identity, and through healing, we embrace wholeness. This process is not just about personal transformation, but about participating in God's redemptive work in the world, becoming vessels of His grace and agents of change. Ultimately, ultimate restoration empowers us to live fully in the light of God's love, reflecting His character and purpose in all that we do. Remember, God's truth always prevails. Let us live in that light and trust that in His time He will expose all things for His glory.